guys, I hope you're all doing well. If you're here for the first time, my name is Tiffany. I am in my late 30s and my husband and I have been struggling to conceive for a long time, and I have been wanting to kind of do a deeper dive into our fertility journey. So this will be a part 1 of 2 videos, and I'm hoping that by talking about some of what we've been going through, hopefully I can help others that are struggling with infertility, especially if you have low AMH or diminished ovarian reserve. I know that while I've been going through this process, I have been trying to watch a lot of videos of other people that are going through their IVF and infertility experiences, and I haven't really seen a ton of people talking about what it's like when you actively have low AMH and DOR. So I'm hoping that there's at least a few people out there that can benefit from me sharing some of my experiences. I also think that by having more open conversations, we can help friends and family who may not understand what it's like to be going through this. Hopefully some of this discussion can potentially help you get diagnosed a little earlier and possibly shorten your time to pregnancy. And even if you're not ready to start a family right now, this information could still be helpful to you in the future. If you decide that you want to freeze your eggs or freeze your sperm, then this information can still come in handy. And as we get farther into our IVF process, I may share some more videos along the way. So with that said, let me jump into the earlier stages of our fertility journey. So my husband and I have been trying to conceive for 8.5 years, and I hate saying that number out loud because it just sucks, but that's just where we're at. There's so much that I wish I knew along the way, especially early on, so this is why I'm doing this video. Like everyone else, I'm sure, we assumed nothing was wrong at the beginning. We were just trying to be patient with the process. I was starting to read pregnancy books and taking prenatals. I started taking ovulation tests and tracking my cycles. Neither of us smoke or drink or do drugs. We're super boring. And after a while, we started to worry, so we went to our primary care physician and she ordered some blood work, basic blood work, and for my husband to do a semen analysis. Our blood work came back normal, but my husband's semen analysis results, his numbers came back pretty low. And we were kind of assigned a fertility doctor to go over the results with. We didn't research fertility clinics and doctors. This is just who we ended up meeting with. And he had the worst bedside manner ever. He essentially just looked at my husband's results and said, it'll be essentially impossible for you to get pregnant naturally. You're gonna have to go straight to IVF, not even deal with IUIs, which are intrauterine inseminations. So this was all a big shock to the system. We were in pure panic mode. You just don't expect any of this to happen to you. IVF is very expensive, so this just didn't seem like anything we could do anytime soon. Once you learn that there's gonna be an enormous hurdle in your fertility journey like this, it's so hard. There's a lot of mental phases you go through in this process, and I remember being triggered by a lot of stuff I was seeing, just normal everyday stuff that you wouldn't really think twice about until you experience this. I remember seeing cute moms walking strollers across the street and just crying. I would be triggered by pregnancy announcements on social media, friends and family that are sharing on social media about their babies and their toddlers and everything seeming so happy and great and wonderful. And you may have friends and family that just seemingly blink and they get pregnant, or they have no problem just popping out multiple kids, and you are just starting to get really bitter and frustrated because you would love to maybe just only have 1 or 2, and it just sucks. So yeah, pretty hard to not be triggered by just everyday life around you sometimes in this process. So eventually I kind of mustered up the courage to start talking a little bit about it to close friends and family. Our immediate family members didn't really have any struggles quite like this before. So for me, it was helpful to talk to friends who were experiencing infertility. And I'm so glad that I did, because they were able to kind of provide resources and information and even IVF clinic recommendations. So if I hadn't started talking about it when I did, our situation would probably be even worse. And then right around the time we were doing this, boom, pandemic. So our plans were on hold. We did not feel comfortable doing anything medical related at that time because obviously COVID was running rampant. So we just kind of had to sit tight for a while. Obviously this ended up being longer than we expected, but eventually we started talking to an IVF doctor who was recommended to me by a friend who actually had a successful IVF pregnancy with this doctor, and he recommended we do more tests right from the beginning. He wanted my husband to go see a urologist and do another semen analysis, but also a DNA fragmentation test, and he also wanted me to get my AMH tested. AMH stands for Müllerian hormone. AMH is a hormone that basically gives you a general idea of your ovarian reserve, basically how many eggs you have in your ovaries. So my husband got his test results back and they were actually looking pretty decent. I think that his numbers had improved some and his DNA fragmentation came back normal, but the urologist did say that he has a varicocele. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically like a varicose vein situation happening. It's actually very common, but just based on his test results at that time, he said that he'd be a candidate for IUI. At this point in time, I got my AMH tested for the first time and my results came back at 0.8, which is not good. And because of this low AMH, I was diagnosed with diminished ovarian reserve. Essentially, it means I have less eggs in my ovaries for my age. And we were told that instead of traditional IVF, we would need to be doing ICSI, which I'll put the abbreviation somewhere, because we both have female and male factor infertility. This is the best method to improve our chances of success if we go down the route of IVF. So at this point in time, it had already been a few years of us trying to conceive, and we were only just now getting this big piece of information that is a big piece of the puzzle. We both have numbers that are lower than average. And again, huge shock to the system getting this information, because now we understand why it's so hard for us to conceive naturally. And there's this whole separate element of, you might have kind of this like unspoken dilemma of like one partner who might be diagnosed with infertility and they're feeling like shame and guilt, even though, you know, a lot of the times you can't really do anything about your situation. And then you yourself might be diagnosed with infertility. And so now you both have infertility. Now you both are sharing this shame and guilt. And it's just so hard to navigate this mentally. Like, the process is already so difficult. I feel for people that don't have a strong foundation with their partner, because you're going through so much mentally and you really need each other at this time. In our situation, it was like, okay, well, now it's an us problem and not a one-sided thing. And on one side, you're like, oh, okay, well, now both of us have shitty numbers, so we're in the same situation, we're in the same boat, and we feel the same way, and we feel sorry for each other. But at the same time, we're like, oh no, we both have a problem. Like, this is gonna make everything so much more difficult. So there's just like literally no good scenario in this situation. So after I was diagnosed with DOR, I just kind of started a spiral. I was trying to research as much as I could about DOR and low AMH, trying to see if there's like anything I could do to reverse it. And spoiler alert, you can't really reverse those numbers, but there is some kind of natural fluctuation that can happen from month to month, and also lifestyle changes can make some adjustments in your numbers, but not necessarily to like a huge degree. I was really starting to talk to my friends that are also struggling with infertility. I'm also incredibly lucky that somehow I have friends that are actually going through almost exactly the same thing as me. I can't imagine what it would be like to not have them as a source of support. And it was recommended to me to read It Starts with the Egg by Rebecca Fett. And this book is very informative. It talks about supplements and kind of lifestyle changes, primarily kind of limiting your exposure to kind of toxic things that might be in your everyday products. And after reading this book, I definitely spiraled further, immediately started ravaging the apartment and swapping out products like a madwoman, changing out my plastic Tupperware for glass and all that stuff. And it made me feel super paranoid about like everything I was doing and touching and putting on my body. After reading this book, I decided to kind of come up with a supplement regimen that we should both do, slightly different for each of us, but almost the same. And so this was just like the pure paranoia phase of our fertility journey, which I am happy to report does kind of subdue after a while. So if you're in it right now, I feel for you, but it does get better. Some other things I wanted to note that happened earlier in our trying to conceive process. After I went off birth control, I had horrible acne and it never went away. But this is just what happened to me. I've also had gradual weight gain throughout the process. My acne and my weight gain was the worst during the pandemic. I think it probably had to do with really high stress levels, and my periods have gradually gotten shorter, but this has been over the span of the entire time we've been trying to conceive. And the duration of time that I have my period has also become shorter. And all of this can cause additional panic because you're like, oh no, I'm gonna go through menopause soon. And you know, you might not be there yet, but there is a chance that you might go through it earlier than the average woman, especially if you have something like diminished ovarian reserve. So it's hard to just stay calm during any point in this process, truly. I noticed that kind of right before and during the IVF process, I feel like triggers have been the worst for me. So like being invited to baby showers, birthday parties, things like that. If people are talking about getting pregnant accidentally or like joking about like wishing they didn't have kids, it just makes me want to punch everyone. So recently I just happened to walk past these two ladies who were having a conversation. I think one of them had a stroller with a kid in it, and I think the lady that had the stroller, she was talking to her friend and she was like, "Oh, my husband said that we have to stop after this one." And again, I just want to punch everyone in the face. Like, I don't know if people realize how obnoxious they are just by having these conversations out in the open. I don't know, you gotta live your life, but at the same time, like, just be less annoying. But again, I'm just super sensitive because of all this. Also, if you're on hormones, then it's like additional sensitivity, right? But there's definitely this element of like, you're just judgmental. You're so judgmental of everybody that's going through this. You're not intending to be, you just are because of the circumstances that you're in. It can be kind of like hard to be happy for people that are announcing pregnancies and stuff. And you may be happy for them, but your first emotions might be just kind of like jealousy and anger and frustration. And it's just this whole convoluted thing that you're feeling, and it just makes all of this so complicated. I don't have any sisters, but I know that a lot of times people talk about like when their sisters get pregnant and it was so easy for them, and you know, that all of that can be so hard, your family and your friends dynamic. So if you're going through this and you're just angry at the world, like, I am right here beside you, my friend. I'm so sorry, like, I feel you. There was also something I did that I feel like it just broke me, was I applied for an IVF grant. I had to write an essay on essentially like why we might be deserving of this grant, and I felt like I was just literally writing an essay on like why I deserve to be a parent. I was just bawling during this process, just like writing something to me like, I think I'd make a really great mom. And like, no one should have to do that. No one should ever be in the position where they're writing an essay on why they deserve to be a parent and why they think they'd make a great parent. Like, no, this is like stupid. So just another thing about this that's just so not fun. So that kind of wraps up our pre-IVF portion of our fertility journey. And in my next video, I'm gonna be covering the IVF portion. And to wrap things up, I want to go over some tips and advice I have for you, especially if you are in the earlier stages of your fertility journey. So to start with, if it's been a few months of you trying to conceive and you haven't had any success, I definitely recommend that you get blood work and a semen analysis done as soon as possible. I think what's typically recommended is if you're over 35, you know, maybe you just wait a few months, maybe 6 months, and if you're younger, maybe you wait a year, but really, obviously, it's up to you. But just know that blood work is generally going to be covered by your insurance. Even if you have kind of crappy insurance, typically blood work is not going to break the bank. So don't be scared about getting these tests done or getting an analysis done. It's really important that you do as early as possible. And ladies, you definitely need to make sure that your AMH is included in your blood work. For me, it was not included early on, and this just screwed everything up for us. So please get that tested. If all your results come back normal, that's great, but you may still want to meet with a fertility specialist and have some additional testing done, just in case you may have something physical going on that blood work is not picking up. It might be good to start with a vaginal ultrasound, and if your results are abnormal and you are a male, you might want to go see a urologist and kind of get some further testing done. You might want to do the DNA fragmentation, just make sure everything's okay. You might be recommended a surgery, and that can be a difficult situation because they're not always guaranteed to improve results. But just know that there are some workarounds, like doing ICSI if you have male fertility issues. Definitely don't wait to start researching and finding as much information as you can. Don't be afraid to do a consultation with a fertility specialist. It's not like you have to agree to do anything right from the start. You're just trying to get more information about your specific situation. Ask them for advice and next steps in the process. Try to be open about talking to your friends and family about it, especially if they themselves have gone through it. And you have to learn to just start advocating for yourself. Don't be shy about asking your doctor questions. patients. You don't need to feel guilty about taking up their time. Like, you are there for a reason, and this is important to you. And if you're talking about next steps, do you feel like you're in agreement with your doctor? Do you feel like your voice is being heard? If you are kind of in a similar boat as me and they are already from the beginning saying like you might want to consider donor eggs and these other alternatives, and you're just not ready for that at this moment, that could be a red flag that maybe you are not working with the right doctor. Are you able to consider other doctors or other clinics? And I know that insurance can complicate this, but you want to go to a doctor and a clinic where you feel like your voice is being heard and you're on the same page to the best of your ability with your doctor. Fertility doctors and IVF and all of this is not one size fits all. You are hopefully going to a doctor in a clinic where you feel like they're listening to you, because you should feel comfortable working with your IVF doctor. So if you're unhappy at your clinic, don't stick around. Another thing that's important is to make sure you go over your supplements with your doctor. You want to make sure that you are taking things that are appropriate for you specifically. A lot of times people just start taking everything and it might not necessarily be right for them. There are definitely things that you can take too much of, and it could potentially further impact your fertility in a negative way. So hopefully if you have a doctor that you trust and feel comfortable talking with, hopefully they can go over supplements with you and make sure that all is good. And to wrap up, if you are going through infertility, I want to try to remind you that there's so much that's out of your control. Try to be nice to yourself. Try to give yourself some grace, because this is already such a difficult process. Your stress levels might be through the roof, and that's just not good for fertility. Remember to try to do things for yourself and try to live your life to the best of your ability as you can while also navigating all this. I know that it's easier said than done, and I really struggle with this, but remember that you can only try to manage so much. So take care of you in the process. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll be back for part 2 of our fertility journey. I hope you have an awesome day and see you later. Abby says hi. Hi, Abby.